Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland, and this video is about CPAC, which ended about a week ago. So sorry that this is not quite up to the minute. CPAC, in case you don't know, is a conservative conference. It's their political action committee. Now, it seems to me that in the United States, the word conservative is synonymous with Republican. People like Sean Hannity say, I'm not a Republican, I'm a registered conservative. I'm not sure which conservative organisation he's a member of. Perhaps it's CPAC. But if you don't vote Republican and you're a conservative in the United States, what would you do? Perhaps not vote at all, just possibly vote for the Reform Party or the Libertarian Party. But, you know, those parties get a fraction of 1% of the vote. So, come on, be honest about it. This word is almost coterminous with Republican in the United States. Now, I blush to say that I'm a conservative, though in the British, not the American sense. In the Republic of Ireland, we don't really have a conservative party, even a small C conservative party. There's the Fine Gael, which is sort of conservative liberal, if that makes any sense. It does where I'm from. It was hilarious to see CPAC, them railing about the necessity of guns, how gun rights are sacred, they're just God-given. It's in the Constitution. You can't argue with that. I mean, there have only been 25 amendments, but you can't argue with that. Well, of course you can. These things are man-made. The Constitution's changed before. No doubt it'll change again. But despite really ramming home this point about how the right to carry weapons is so vital, CPAC was a gun-free zone. So they think it'd be dangerous without the guns. It must be the most dangerous place in the United States without a gun-free zone. Ooh, and how many people got killed at CPAC? 0? Well, there are lots of places where you are allowed to carry weapons, but people do get killed, and in large numbers. But schools have gun-free zones. Well, they do have armed guards there, which obviously doesn't prevent people getting shot dead, as happened in that school in Florida over a year ago. So remember, these gun nuts say that anyone should be allowed any gun, anywhere, anytime. The right to bear arms shall not be abridged. In plain English, that means the right to carry weapons shall not be limited. So no restriction on any weapon, be it a knife, be it a gun, be it a tank, be it a nuclear weapon, why not? No limitations at all. Now, admittedly, there are some sane Republicans who say, come on, we need a bit of gun control. There was the Brady Bill. President Reagan endorsed this sort of thing. Colin Powell said, we need to get real. We need to introduce some reasonable limitations on the right to possess and carry firearms. So I'm stunned at their tenacity and their temerity in saying that there ought to be no gun control, even after gun massacres. No matter how large, the answer would always be more guns. It wouldn't be a case of trying to keep them out of the wrong hands. Because, okay, there are these background checks, but they build in loopholes that private trades are there, so that the whole legislation is only as good as the loophole, and on and on. So it seems to me to be a baculus in American political life, well, perhaps American life generally, machismo, to prove that you're a big swinging dick, that my one's bigger than your one, my gun, my house, my car, my pay packet, my whatever. This is toxic masculinity. Of course, there's a reasonable level of masculinity. I like to think I have that. I'm not a tough guy by anybody's definition. I don't think I'm a complete weakling, but I'm not so unsure of my own masculinity that I'm compelled to have loads of weapons and really beef up and be trying to put on muscle down the gym and all the rest of it. So some people are fixated with proving that they're hard. Doesn't that not speak of a profound insecurity? That there's deep-seated sense of uncertainty when it comes to their own manhood, which is why some people are compelled to be constantly throwing their own weight around, proving they're not a yellow belly, trying to scare others. It's despicable. Obviously exists in every country, and I'm not suggesting that most Americans are like that, but I do think the United States suffers this more so than most other countries. And then their new bugbear is AOC. Yeah, so she's become a folk devil for the Republicans. She wants to take away their cows. What? AOC said that it'd be better for the environment if people ate less meat. I don't think she specifically mentioned beef. All right, and there are some arguments about that, about obviously CO2 that's released from cattle farming, or meat farming generally, or animal farming generally, perhaps I should say. And we'd just be more efficient in the use of farmland if we were growing vegetables and cereal crops and things like that. She didn't say no meat, she said less. I don't believe she's a vegetarian herself. What it was a suggestion for a lifestyle choice. I don't think she proposed any legislation whatsoever. Well, some Republicans really seized this one and ran with it. They went right left field. Well, left is that way for me. And went really crazy about this. Ted Cruz, for example. Now, Senator Cruz does not have the excuse of stupidity. He's a man who's blessed with low cunning, but he's very much into categorical thinking. And that's the thing is, clever people have this ability to delude themselves. They can lawyer their way out of a situation, even present with a very feeble factual case. They will cherry pick, they'll get the little bits of it, the evidence, which they'll massage rather roughly to try and build some sort of credible case. They will try to disconfirm or discard or just de-emphasize the evidence which militates against the position they wish to advocate for. And Senator Cruz is a prime example of that. So the Democrats do not want to confiscate people's cattle or even purchase them. They're not in the business of cattle. Ted Cruz says, the Democrats want to kill your cows. Well, Ted, do you eat cows alive? I don't think so. When you eat them, they're dead anyway. You want to kill them too. You then want to cook them and eat them, well, unless you wish to eat them raw. So there's no really no difference there. The Republicans are so envenomed against AOC. They must consider her to pose a very grave threat to them. She's a young Hispanic woman. She's good looking, which doesn't hurt. She's courageous. She's articulate. And she's vociferous. So she has a certain purchase on the youth vote. I do think the cult of AOC has been a bit overblown. So I think she might have peaked a bit too early. Pride may come before a fall. She doesn't come across as conceited to me. She comes across as very genuine, very approachable. But expectations for her are stratospherically high. She's almost sure to disappoint. But there we are. It appears that reality, though, is optional for the grand old party, that they can believe that the Democrats wish to exterminate cattle on the basis of the flimsiest of evidence when AOC simply said it would be a good thing for the environment and for people's health if they didn't eat quite so much meat. And that's true, because most people eat too much meat in the developed world. I certainly do. Twice a week would be a lot healthier than twice a day. Anyway, so this is the Republican mindset. There's no such thing as climate change. There was no evolution, and guns don't kill people. People do. Well, I mean, guns can kill people by themselves if dropped accidentally, or even animals have accidentally set them off. That's that. Anyway, there's white supremacy from so many there, like Tucker Carlson. Well, there was a video released of him recently going on about this. Call me racist if you want. Okay, I do want. I will call you racist. I mean, that was an admission from him. If I say call me old-fashioned, that's saying, yeah, I am old-fashioned. People who believe in racial superiority disprove racial superiority by being so inadequate. And Tucker Carlson would be a prime example of that. Constantly race-baiting and suggesting that immigrants, indeed legal immigrants, are really bad news, occasionally saying they're okay, saying, oh, well, they want to pick lettuce or whatever. Well, the lettuce needs to be picked. Not enough Americans are doing it. In fact, unemployment is very low. A lot of working class Americans have 2 jobs, even 3 jobs, still can't make ends meet, still can't afford health insurance. Well, if you didn't want people to be allowed to immigrate to the United States to pick vegetables and fruit, you'd have to pay Americans decently. But of course, Carlson would consider that anathema. They can't possibly have a living wage for blue-collar Americans, because that would be fair. That would raise living standards. And then the likes of Mr. Carlson might have to pay a few cents more for vegetables. So it appears to me that the Republicans are in favor of every advance of equality except the next one. It's fascinating in a way. Quite a few working class people, well, whites usually, church-going, gun-owning whites or working class, vote for the Republican Party. It's staggering. It made me call to mind what Nye Bevan said, this mid-20th century British politician. Poverty supports wealth, and that is the genius of the Conservative Party. Well, it's something similar to going on in the United States, the way that a lot of the working class will vote for their own exploitation. And that really is a miracle. I've got to hand it to the Republicans. They are extremely clever in the way they managed to persuade a lot of blue-collar Americans that voting for affordable health care, Medicare for all, that voting for a decent minimum wage, things like that, voting for a cleaner environment would be worse for them, when clearly it wouldn't. That the choice is if we have a minimum wage, then we're just going to turn into North Korea. Well, actually, the Republican Party quite likes North Korea these days. It's not going to make us more prosperous country like Canada or Denmark or Switzerland or lots of American allies. The only other option is North Korea. Somehow, I don't think so. So there's this bifurcation. If you go back to the 90s, there wasn't quite such bombardment between the two major parties. It's because, people like Trump, they've really raised the temperature. They've got rid of civility and common courtesy in politics. There used to be Republican presidents who were full of decency on a personal level, Bush father and son, for instance, and now you have Trump calling the press enemy of the people for simply telling the truth, for reporting his words accurately, saying that they're publishing fake news, when of course Fox News is the semi-official organ of the Trump administration, is more or less Trump's PR agency. A leading chance of lock her up, urging his followers beat the shit out of them, then claiming it was a joke despite people actually being severely assaulted by Trump supporters at rallies. It happened several times. And then one of the fairy tales people tell themselves about the United States is that there is equality before law. You see this billionaire who makes so much money and commits these crimes, he incites violent crime, and it happens, and nothing is done about it. His collar is not felt. Or he's hiding in plain sight, or he commits these crimes openly. The Fifth Avenue principle of his, or the way he carried out that massive scale fraud with his Trump University, which was not a university at all, and no, he never had the handcuffs slapped on. There we are. It was once the party of law and order. Remember, this is the party that was all for the prison industrial complex. Shamefully, the Democrats have gone along with that to a large extent. This was the party of constitutionalism, and here the president seems to want to abrogate the Constitution, to arrogate as much power to himself as he possibly can, to turn it almost into caudillismo, where he can simply rule by fiat, issuing decrees on this and that, the wall, the national emergency. He loses a vote in Congress, that's the national emergency. It wasn't an emergency until he lost the vote. If it really was an emergency, he would have done this on day one of his presidency. No longer into rights for ordinary people, and obviously this is the party of detention without trial, of waterboarding. Look at Guantanamo Bay. This asperity in politics is lamentable. I think the Democrats have not really followed the Republicans down into the mire, but the trouble is they may conclude that scraping the gutter has worked for the Republicans. Insulting people in the foulest possible manner has paid great dividends for Trump and his acolytes. So if that's the only way to win, we're just going to have to get our hands dirty too. So family values, that's what the Republican Party was all about. Remember George H.W. Bush, when the economy tanked, he said, we've got to vote for me for family values rather than Clinton. Well, look at Trump with his 2 divorces. Now, I'm not a moralistic person, I'm not a families value person, doesn't bother me a fig. But if you're a families value person, it ought to trouble you very deeply. His constant adultery, again, I don't judge him for that. I wouldn't care if he'd committed adultery with 100 different women, or indeed men. But, Republicans, if you actually believe what you say, you should be revolted by this. This is a thing of repugnancy from a Christian fundamentalist standpoint. The way he was paying off those porn stars, there's no other reason he was doing that. And obviously, she was his prostitute. It was very respectable of her to be a prostitute. She's far more respectable than someone like Trump. But this is no blot on his escutcheon, as so far as most Republicans appear to believe. And usually they're oh so moral, but there's so much flagrant lying from Trump, almost incessantly. The Washington Post has published a record of 6,000 lies or misleading statements that Trump has told on the record since he became president. That is quite some work. The trouble is, he's gone back to toddlerhood. He honestly can't distinguish fact from fiction. And that's worrying, because people in leadership positions have to face up to the truth, especially what's unpalatable, and make their decisions based on reality. I would like to do this, but that's unachievable for whatever reason, especially like a military operation or something. If he keeps his nose clean, well, he never keeps his nose clean, relatively clean, he may well be re-elected as president. It's very troubling. But anyway, there's a small tax issue which they may get him. And now we have, it was Alan Dershowitz, used to be a Democrat-leaning lawyer, saying, oh, it's outrageous that it's being pursued. about taxes like Al Capone. Well, not a great example to pick, Mr. Dershowitz, because Capone was guilty. Is that you acknowledging that Trump is guilty of tax evasion as well? Even if he's not as bad as Al Capone, if he's committed tax evasion, that's it. It's an open and shut case. It's a slam dunk. And there is a paper trail. It's proved, 100%, absolutely no room for doubt. There you have it. And Dershowitz saying, oh, well, they can't get him on other bad things, so they're getting him on tax evasion. Fine. Is an absolutely legitimate political tactic. Is nothing new. It's been used since the 1930s. There we are. So Dershowitz seems to be suggesting tax paying is optional. You don't have to. And as for Trump's reputation for being such a fantastic businessman, think about this. The early 70s, he inherited $400 billion. That's almost 50 years ago. Now, it's thought that his fortune is actually more like 5 billion, not 10 billion. So his fortune has increased something like 13-fold in about half a century. Factoring into inflation, that would suggest his wealth has increased hardly at all in real terms. So much for his reputation for being such a fantastic business executive and entrepreneur. Oh well, I wish we'd see the back of Trump very soon.